Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sports Breakdown once again. So today we are going to discuss about Sri Lanka Cricket, the squad analysis for Sri Lanka Cricket ahead of the 2024-2020 World Cup. And we'll be touching a bit on the Lanka Premier League as well and the controversies that happened. So we'll be touching a bit on that as well. But all right, so we'll introduce the guests. So we have Nicholas Brook, apparently the writer who wrote on the island. I actually haven't read that book yet, but I will order the book soon. But a writer and is a keen follower for for Sri Lanka cricket as well, and who knows his stuff inside out. From the UK, joining us. So Nick, how are you doing? So please do read the An Island 11. I think that's in Amazon. I think I'll try ordering it very soon. But yeah, but Nick, how are you doing, by the way? So the Sri Lanka gonna play on Tuesday as well. So how have you been doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, thanks, Paul, and thanks so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here and to get the juices flowing with a little bit of discussion ahead of Monday's big game. I'm just counting down the days, really, wishing that the weekend would fly by in a flash for once so that we can get to Monday afternoon. Not a time of the week I normally look forward to, but yeah, can't wait to see how Sri Lanka go against South Africa.
Yeah, and alongside we've got Adil Siddiq, a journalist who I think worked for the Papare before, just like Akila that we added him. I mean, who joined maybe months ago on our channel as well. So Adil is a keen cricket follower and follows Sri Lanka cricket very well. Adil, how you been doing? Because we saw you on the Eye on Cricket, where Viren posted on his video also a couple weeks ago. But great to have you on the show, by the way, Adil.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me, Pawan, and good to be with Viren once again and meeting Nicholas, virtual meeting Nicholas for the very first time. And first of all, I would like to appreciate like a person out of Sri Lanka, so passionate about Sri Lankan cricket, spending so much time and energy to compile such a book. And I've heard a lot of good things about the book, and I've really appreciated Nicholas as a ardent Sri Lankan cricket fan. And yeah, and Pawan, yeah, it's nice to be here and talking about Sri Lanka cricket. Like Nicholas said, very much
Yeah.
excited for Monday for the first game of the T20 World Cup for Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And more than for just for Sri Lankan games, for the World Cup in a whole, I'm really excited for this World Cup because it's like the first ICC event which has more than 16 teams, nine
Mm.
associate teams. It's a record, 20
Yeah.
teams. So yeah, very excited for the World Cup. Hope the rain doesn't play spoil sport, but
Yeah.
let's see. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we've got Viren alongside us, the founder of Ion Cricket, and also did a commentary stint on the Papari recently as well, and also was a former member of the Cricket Analyst also 2 years back. So, Viren, how you been doing? I know you've been in Sri Lanka recently, and you've been doing commentary stints and all. So it's great having you on my channel first of all.
Thanks, Pawan. Thanks for inviting me. It's great being back in Sri Lanka to begin with, and also being here alongside some very familiar faces. As someone who's read The Islands 11, it's a must read. I'm blessed and lucky to have a signed version of it, thanks to Nick. And yeah, and for those of you keen on engaging with the book and discourse linked to the book, stay tuned because Merle, Nick, and I have a few plans in store for you later on towards the end of the year. But looking ahead to the World Cup, many pundits have written us off. I was just watching Sky Sports podcast on the World Cup, and Ian Ward had Dhananjaya De Silva in his Dream 11, which got me thinking there isn't much research going on linked to Sri Lanka cricket ahead of the
Yeah,
World Cup. But we've always enjoyed being underdogs going into these world events. So
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to seeing what's in store come Monday.
Yeah. All right, so let's first touch on the Lanka Premier League, and I want Adil your thoughts on the Lanka Premier League auction as a whole, because we saw Kusal Janit Pereira getting unsold in the LPL auction, which is I think a disaster for the Lanka Premier League, because we saw Kusal Janit Pereira playing in the Sri Lankan national team just like a few months ago in the Zimbabwe series, and all of a sudden he's out of the playing 11, and then he's out of the squad for the 2020 World Cup, which we will discuss in a bit as well. But Janit Pereira not getting picked in the auctions, and we see openers like Dimut Karuratne getting picked by Virat Kandi. I mean, Dimuth Karunaratne basically is a test opener and he's not suited to play in 2020 cricket. So I don't understand the dynamics of these teams going after, test players rather than 2020 players. And we've seen Pathum Nisanka, who luckily got picked by Jaffna Kings in the second round of the auctions, but not been even picked by in the first round of the Lanka Premier League. We know that, Pathum Nisanka is our number one opener right now and probably is our best batter in limited overs right now. So your thoughts on that, Adil?
Okay, Lanka Premier League auction. So for me, I'll just start with one word. It's such a disappointing auction because I had really high expectations for this auction, having seen how it went, how the tournament went last year. Because we felt like the team managements are finally, cracking the code of managing a proper T20 franchise. We just saw glimpses of, hope. But this auction, again, three teams got new owners, completely new. I mean, not three, two teams got new owners, different managements, and some teams, Jaffna and Candy, were not confirmed even until 2 days before the auction. They just confirmed in the very last minute. So I highly doubt if they had put in place a proper auction strategy before they came in there, because they were not even sure. They were not sure even if they're going to take part. So I highly doubt if they had a proper action strategy. Gaul seemed to be the only team who had a strategy, but even them, I mean, I had really high expectations for Gaul, but even they, I mean, I won't say controversial, but yeah, of course they are controversial, but some really questionable picks. Those quick picks are actually questionable. So overall, it's very disappointing. But looking at how the team stacked up, I would rate Jaffna, Colombo, and Gaul as the people or the teams who have done a reasonable job and who have managed to put up decent scores. Candy, I just can't understand their auction strategy. They seem to always love former captains,
Pakistan players.
Pakistan
They
players,
love Pakistan players,
and experienced players. I mean, how much experience do you want for a franchise? I mean, for a team, do you want all 11 players to be experienced? I just can't understand the auction strategy. And Dambulla, let's just keep them aside. There was definitely something suspicious about them, and we just saw the news that they have involved with some controversial stuff, and they have been the owner is arrested. So we don't know what really happened there. Let's keep it there and let's let the authorities take care of that. But definitely their auction strategy or whatever, I don't know if they even had a strategy, was really, really questionable. So that's just a quick take on the auction. But coming into the players who missed out, let me put out something that I personally, this is like a personal opinion of mine. So there is this under 23 rule which was introduced just for this LPL. So previously there weren't any mandatory under 23 player rule, but for this LPL they introduced the rule saying every team should play a under 23 player in every game. That's actually a really good rule, but I kind of think that denied opportunities for certain players, because I said this in the analysis with Viren as well. So I look at the entire community of Sri Lankan cricketers in three categories. You have the number one, the regular players, the one in the Hasarangas, Charits and all those players. And then there is category two. These players are in and out and, just there and thereabout knocking at the door. So most of these players are above 23 years. So the players who fall under this category are, let me start with some uncapped players. Milan Ratnayaka, Movin Subasinghe, Tarindu Ratnayaka, who else? Nimesh Vimukti, Ravindu Fernando, Isita eventually got a bid just for base price. I mean, these are players who are uncapped in this category, and we have some capped players like Lasit Cruz Pulle, Kamil Mishar, even Janit Lienege is yet to be a regular. So we have like a lot of players in this category, and very few of them are actually under 23, like Chevon Daniel, or Vijaykanth, Vyaskanth. Very few of them are actually under 23. And then you have this third category where you'll find most of the all of the under 23, all of the real under 23 players fall into this category. Those are the people who recently played Sri Lanka under 19s, the Matheesha Pathiranas, Dinura Kalupahanas, players like Ruvishan Perera, the fast bowler, Pulindu Pereira, and those players. So what happened with this rule was teams were forced to go for more than three under 23 players so that they have enough under 23 options to test and play the best option. Teams like Colombo were smart. They picked Siobhan Daniel, Dunith Velalage, and Matheesha Pathirana. Like, you can even afford to play all three of them in the playing 11. All of them are under 23. Gaul, Marsha Tarupati, and they have Kamidu Nadishan. Candy have two decent under 23s, Pawan Ratnayak and Chamat Gomez. Jaffna have Vijaykanth, Vyaskanth, and apart from that, I don't think they have a lot of under 23 options. They have like Keesan, Vidusan, and some decent under 23, but their first choice under 23 option would be Vyaskanth for sure. And Tambula did a mess of it. I mean, they just have two under 23 players. Ranesh Silva, who has played a few T20s for his domestic team, and Rusanda Gamage, who is just a fresh graduate from the under 19 team. So I don't think he's still in that level of playing in a professional T20 league. He's a good player, no offense to him, but that's just how bad Dambulla performed in the auction. So what this rule did was it made teams go for more under 23 players in the expense of deserving places for these second category players according to my classification. So Movin Subasinghe missed out. I heard that teams were a bit concerned about his base price, which was 5,000 USD above the usual uncapped players. Most of them were based at 5,000, but Movin had placed him at 10,000. So it could have been a negative for him, but at the end of the day, he is definitely, he's a must pick in the LPL. He missed out. Milan Ratnayaka missed out. Nimesh Vimukti, Tarindu Ratnayaka, Kamil Mishar, Sachita Jayatilaka is a really hard hitter who bowls some leg. He's about 27 or something. So
I think even Tanuka Dabare also missed out, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Exactly. Tanuka Dabare missed out. Navod Parnavitan was not even in the auction. I don't know what happened to him. He was not even in the auction list. So most of these players who I personally am really looking forward to getting enough opportunities. Yes, even the T20 clubs. If you look at the domestic T20 tournament, of which the first round ended 2 days before the auction, the maximum number of games a team got was 4. I mean, how could you expect players to put up like sufficient or good enough performances to get the attention of a LPL franchise when you only have 4 games, and those were also rain affected? And I suppose those they were played on turning tracks. If you just look at the scores, very rarely you will see totals in excess of 150. So it doesn't. The domestic T20 didn't help the category 2 players. LPL auction didn't help them. Where are they supposed to perform? I mean, they won't be getting IPL contracts for sure, definitely. Where are they supposed to play? So that's a big vacuum in Sri Lanka cricket at the moment, and I personally had high hopes for LPL to cover that vacuum and give a better stage for these players. But this under 23 rule just worsened that opportunity for them. But I'm still with that opportunity. With that rule, that's a really good rule.
Yeah, but definitely, that's a good rule.
They should also, consider the future of these players. I mean,
it's very disappointing to see Milan Ratnayaka missing out, because if I'm not mistaken, like 1 year ago, like in the SLC limited overs, he was the highest wicket taker, if I'm not mistaken.
They've all performed. Yeah, in some tournament or the other, they've all performed. Most of the players,
So it's very disappointing to see certain players missing out. So let's go to Viren, by the way. So, there's another controversy, Isuru Udana going for 100,000 to Gaul Marvels. I want to discuss on that, because I don't know, all of a sudden, they bid 100,000 for Isuru Udana when his base price is 30,000. I'm not sure whether that was tactical, because Gaul wanted a local fast ball, if I'm not mistaken, and they didn't have much options left. which is why I'm not sure. That could be one of the reasons why Gaul Marvels went 100,000 on him, just splashed 100,000 on him. And also, thoughts on, the under-19 captain, Dinuro Kalapahana, missing out on the LPL as well, because it's very sad to see these kind of players missing out, in our local franchise league as well. So thoughts on that? Yeah.
Because I'm not affiliated with any franchise or any team, I can say this openly. There was agent warfare, player agent warfare on full display at the LPL auction. And this is where I speak about integrity of holding an auction. You spoke about the lack of fast bowlers in Sri Lanka, Pawan, but I don't think Isuru Udana is your solution. You have so many other left arm and right arm fast bowling options, youngsters who can make a name for themselves. But it was the manner in which his bid was made. There was an opening bid at his base price, and the owner, without it being rivaled or without there being any rivalry for it, immediately jacked up his price to 100K, which raised a lot of eyebrows in the auction room. And I was there as an observer, and that was my cue to leave as soon as I saw that was me done at the LPL auction. And this is where I want to address another thing, and this is something that's linked to what Adil said.
Yeah, Viren,
This is the fifth year
quickly.
of the year of the LPL. Sorry, Adil, go ahead.
Yeah, so Viren, I think they also had clarified that bid, saying they wanted to outbid Candy from using RTM, using right to match for Isuru Udana, but I don't know, that's their explanation.
So when your defending champions are trying to use their right to match on Isuru Udana, that in itself is an issue with the Lanka Premier League. And it's an issue that I harped on earlier. If you look at any other league in the world, let's take the PSL, for example. You have franchises with sustained ownerships across seasons. You have the same owners being at the helm throughout seasons. What does that do? It provides an incentive for these owners to invest in local talent. We see that with Jaffna, the most stable franchise in the LPL, going after the likes of Viaskant, Thiessen Vitusan, individuals who wouldn't have had an opportunity in any other franchise. But you take the other owners who come in haphazardly, brought in 2-3 weeks before an auction. As Adil said, they don't do their homework on local/foreign players. But B, they make these haphazard calls that certainly raise eyebrows. And moving on to your second question on Dinuro Kalapahana, he was one of our stars at the Under-19 World Cup. Adil spoke about a particular Under-19 player who was picked without playing any T20 cricket under his belt. No domestic T20 cricket under his belt. But you have the likes of Dinuro Kalapahana. I'm just going to toss in a few other names, players like Vishen Hanabage, who played T20 cricket. Aggressive batsmen on their given day, who have an opportunity to thrive through the LPL. So when you have, and I don't want to read into it too much because I don't want this to be red flagged by Sri Lanka cricket. But when you have different incentives or twisted incentives with player agents and other stakeholders who are involved in this LPL auction, you're going to get the end results that we saw last week.
Absolutely. Also, Viren, following up, we saw Garuka Sanet going to Colombo Strikers for a reasonable price. He was the net bowler for Delhi Capitals in the IPL this year. So your thoughts on Colombo targeting Garuka Sanet, and you think he could do well in this Lanka Premier League?
Brilliant. It's great to see. It was great to see that rivalry in terms of bidding for Garuka Sanket in the auction room, which is very nice to see, to back your youngster. And Colombo has a knack of doing that. They did that last year with Matheesha Pathirana. They did that with Sanket. And if you look at their pace bowling attack, it's quite stacked now with Matheesha Pathirana, Garuka Sanket, Taskin Ahmed in the ranks as well. So you've got a trio of good seam bowling options there for Colombo.
Yep. Definitely. Coming to Nick, we'll get a neutral point of view over here as well. Nick, your thoughts? Matheesha Pathirana getting the highest bid in the Lanka Premier League, well deserved, because, he plays for Chennai Super Kings in the IPL. He's been performing. Unfortunately, this season he was not playing that many matches due to injury. I don't know. It's a suspect whether, whether he's going to play for Sri Lanka. He wanted to prepare to play for Sri Lanka for the upcoming 2020 World Cup or not. That is all up to him or whatever. But your thoughts, especially Matheesha Pathirana and Dasun Shanaka getting the top two. Sorry, Matheesha Pathirana getting 125 and then Isuru Udana and then Dasun Shanaka 85,000 to Beloved Candy. But thoughts on Matheesha getting the highest overall?
I think that Pathirana as the top pick is an absolute no-brainer, that him getting that $125,000 contract. If you look at what he's done in the IPL this year, I know he only played 6-7 games, but his combination of strike rate and economy, especially his economy in the death overs, is just unparalleled. I think across the whole seasons, I did a piece about this for the Murali, and only 2 people have ever matched his cutoffs of a strike rate under 11 and economy under 7.5, and that was AJ Ty and Adam Zampa way back in 2015, 2016. And I think that essentially now we're getting to a stage where he's starting to look like the second best death bowler in the world, behind Jasprit Bumrah, obviously. So yeah, I think that he's a no-brainer as a top pick. I understand that he's going to be fit for Monday, and I hope it's going to be a huge World Cup for him. I also echo a lot of what Adil and Viren have said. I think Isuru Udana, and this is not throwing shade on him at all, he's been a fantastic servant to Sri Lankan cricket, but him getting $100,000 bid out of nowhere when his base price is 30k is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in an auction. And it's really disappointing, because I think the trajectory that the LPL was going last year, there was so much excitement. You're really starting to feel a sense that Sri Lanka is developing a burgeoning pool of players. And now the narrative online on Twitter is very much that this league is a complete laughingstock, right? I think Adil highlighted Mohan Subasinghe on Twitter as well, like the fact that this is a resource, a lower middle order batter who can hit sixes and potentially strike at 150 plus. That's a resource that Sri Lanka are crying out for. And if they don't want to get left behind as a T20 side, these are the kind of players who they need to be nourishing and cultivating. And so to see someone like that get passed up, to see Pathum Nissanka, like anyone who's watched Pathum Nissanka bat over the past year can take one look at his raw numbers, I don't know what he's striking at in T20 cricket, 120, and see that he's not going to end his career striking at 120. I expect him to strike 140 plus during the World Cup. And so for him to get passed up and then to get picked up in a accelerated second round, and he's gone to Jaffna King, so I think they've also got Kusal Mendes and Avishka Fernando, so they're trying to squeeze 3 openers into 2 spots, and someone's going to probably have to bat at number 3. I think the auction was just strange, confusing, disappointing for a number of reasons. And Viren touched on stable ownership. I think that's something that the LPL really needs to prioritize moving forward. I don't think it helps teams changing names every year, teams changing owners every year. Excuse me, I'm coldy. And I think we'd all like to see the league expand, right? I think we all see that there's enough burgeoning local talent for the LPL to become an 8-team league, but stability has to be the top priority. And
Nick, to follow up, do you think like IPL owners should link up to LPL, because we see now stability? It's been 5 seasons we've been seeing investors in Sri Lanka dropping out after a season. We see then ownership, they're going to India, Bangladesh. Jaffna Kings have been pretty stable because the Laika owners, I think they have a team in the TMPL, if I'm not mistaken, Laika Kowai Kings, and then they own the Jaffna Kings as well. So there's some stability over there, but the other 4 franchises keep on changing. And I don't know, local franchises, local investors keep on dropping out after a season or 2. But I'm not sure whether IPL teams also would like to invest on the LPL, seeing how Sri Lanka cricket have been lacklusting in the past 10 years and all. But do you think the IPG group should either drop out, or do you think what sort of plan should be there for the LPL after this season? Because it's going down the order, seeing how what's going on with this league. Do you think the ownership should change, or do you think they should approach IPL or maybe PSL or some other league that is going on right now? Because we see with IPL, currently the teams run MLC and they say 20. So don't you think they could invest on the LPL if they can approach the IPL team? So any thoughts on that?
I would personally love to see IPL owners invest in the LPL. I think that from SLC's perspective, it's a no-brainer to try and get the backing of the IPL. I'm sure that not everyone would agree with that. But I mean, you take the example of the SA20, which is into its 2nd season now, right? And having IPL ownership from the start. the kind of boost that's given that league in terms of exposure, in terms of quality coaching and backroom staff, in terms of, I think, just the general perception, like having that IPL brand is something that people globally recognize and associate, and it makes you instantly want to watch that tournament. And I mean, I think that tournament has instantly kind of springboarded to being, you know, if you look at the IPL as the very top, I think that the SA20 is one of the couple of tournaments which is right in the rung below. And I mean, we've seen the same thing with MLC, right? And, you know, it also, IPL backing brings cash, right? And we've seen MLC salaries are already surpass the salaries that players are earning in the 100. So we're already seeing players from England decamp, stopping playing the T20 Blast or missing the start of the 100 so they can go and play in MLC. And so I think from my perspective, having IPL investment in the LPL would be a massive step forward. But I think probably to get to that stage, the league has to demonstrate stable administration and it has to become a more attractive investment before we can kind of bank on that.
Yeah. One more question before we switch to the Sri Lanka, the 2020 World Cup. Adil, I want to ask you, do we, come up with 6 teams next season for the LPL? Now it's been 5 seasons that we're having 5 teams, and I don't know why they're having a playoffs in the first place when we're having 5 teams. We're having 4 teams playing in the playoffs, which is a silly case. I don't know why they're following up the IPL, but it doesn't make sense. So do you think like next season LPL should go to 6 teams or maybe even 7 teams? Because we saw in the SLPL that had once in 2012, in the inaugural edition, they had 7 teams. So do we think, like seeing the cities and all, do you think that we should go to like 6 to 7 teams next season, seeing now PSL going to 8 teams in 2026? So should we make that move, but also thinking in mind that we are not having stability also in the owners? So I'm not sure whether this move could be possible in the first place, but anyways, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Pawan, I think you summed it up. So if we can assure stability in terms of ownership, I mean, it's a no-brainer. We should definitely expand the number of teams. 5 teams is not enough to accommodate the set of deserving local players that we have. But my question comes, can we accommodate or can we attract enough foreign players? That's the only, I think even in a recent press conference, even the tournament director, Samantha Dodanwala, he said the exact concern. So it's not about local players. We can afford to play even 7 teams with we have sufficient local talent. But the question comes down to foreign players. Can we attract enough foreign players, and can we try and secure a good window where most of the foreign players can come and play? So those are the big questions that we have. Expanding is not a problem at all in terms of local players, but though if we can find answers for those questions, can we have stability in terms of ownership? Can we find a proper window for the foreign players? And like Nick said, can we give them extra remuneration, because money is what it is all about at the end of the day. So they would want to get paid more for sure if they are spending 1 month or I don't know 2 months in playing this league. So if we can answer those questions, 6 teams, 7 teams, I don't care. Just increase the number of teams. We have players, we have local players who can play for
I think Viren had a point,
I'm sorry, Pawan, I think we're eating into our time to discuss Sri Lankan squad, but a quick point on what Nick and Adil just said. We spoke about stable ownership and the lack of foreign players. I think Nick's solution of getting IPL franchises involved solves both those issues. And the prime example is, if you look at the Super Kings franchise, for example, you have Mahesh Teekshana playing for both Joburg and Chennai. So they bring their own players who played for their franchises around the world through to the LPL, and you have that pull factor there. Plus, you have loyal fan bases that are developed. Hailing from Colombo, I don't know whether I side with Colombo Kings, Colombo Stars, or Colombo Strikers. There's no loyalty towards my franchise. But if you bring a Super Kings, or you bring a Gujarat Titans, or you bring a MI Colombo into the mix, you not only bring local fans to your local team, but international fans. So you have your MI faithful who will back an MI Colombo, or Goal Super Kings being backed by CSK and Joburg fans. So it brings a completely different market.
But don't you think like But talking about that also, don't you think like the team names, like, in the SA20 and MLS, in case if they bring this Champions League, I'm sorry myself also I'm bringing in all this, but if they bring in a Champions League tournament that happened previous and back then, and then if you have all these teams, and if LPL also invest in IPL, that's my issue as well. If you have those proper names, like Super Kings, MI and all that going across, don't you think like it's not good for a league, like when it comes to like locally, if I'm not mistaken?
I mean, if the proliferation of T20 leagues is linked to the IPL teams expanding their horizons, that's perfectly fine. And you'll always have a Kumar Sangakkara who plays for Kandurata Warriors against the Sunrisers Hyderabad in the Champions League.
Definitely, yeah. All right,
and, just one last thing, Pawan. Along with players and fan bases, what I mean, bringing down IPL franchises brings is proper talent scouts, analysts, and a whole bunch of backroom staff who are very well experienced and who know the drill in and out. I mean, you see these scouting stories of the IPL. They just find players from like very rural areas of India. And I remember there was a player who played his. He hadn't played any T20 cricket before he played in the IPL. So that's just for a tournament of the stature of IPL. That's just mind-boggling. And how could you go and like find players? India is a huge country, and if you can bring those resources, those people those talent scouts to Sri Lanka, I'm pretty sure they can find a lot of good quality cricketers from the streets of Sri Lanka.
All right, all right, let's go on the 2020 World Cup squad now. Enough discussing about LPL. So let's discuss about the squad of Sri Lanka. So let's bring in Nick first of all. So we have Wanindu Hasaranga as captain. We have Charit Asalanka as vice captain. Kusal Mendis, Pathum Nisanka, Kamindu Mendis, Sadira Samaravikrama, Angelo Mathews, Dasun Shanaka, Dhananjay De Silva, Mahish Tikshana, Dunit Velalage, Dushmada Chamira, Matheesha Pathirana, Nuwan Tushara, and Dilshan Madhushankar. And the reserves are Asita Fernando, Vijaykant Vieskant, Bhanuka Rajapaksha, Janit Lianage. So coming to Nick, first of all, let's talk this, process down, to 5 categories. So let's discuss about the batters and maybe the all-rounders first of all. Sorry, the wicket keepers. So we have the batters as Charit Asalanka and Pathum Nisanka, Kusal Mendis and Sadira Samaravikrama. Nick, coming to you. I don't want to, based on the warm-up match that we had in the against Netherlands, but it really concerns me, the way that we played against Netherlands, and we had a good top order. Having Kusal Mendis, Pathum Nisanka, I mean, even Sadira, I'm not sure how many games he will play, but that top order of Pathum Nisanka, Kusal Mendis, Kamindu Mendis, do we see those 3 performing at this upcoming 2020 World Cup, seeing how, other teams have the top 3 like solidified, but our top 3, it slightly concerns me, the top order of Sri Lanka, the top order batting order of Sri Lanka. So any thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest concern from the Netherlands game, obviously it's hard to read too much into it because none of us got a glimpse of anything that was going on. But to see Pathum, Kusal and Kamindu combined for, I think it was 14 off 20, is a slight concern. But it's a trend that I think will be bucked through the course of this tournament. But I think it's really important that those top 3, and I think they will be the top 3 for at least the first 3 or 4 matches. I think they've got to show intent, right? I said on the Murali podcast, we saw what Abhishek and Head and Narayan and Salt in particular did during the course of the IPL, and the parameters for what teams can score in the first 6 overs have slightly shifted. We're probably not going to see such flat pitches across the group stages, maybe especially in America. But I think it's still really important that those 3 guys show intent. And I think that they're well placed, right? Smaller grounds. So hitting 6s shouldn't be off the question, even for someone like Pathum, who isn't necessarily the biggest 6-hitter and prefers to kind of target spin. Pathum's someone who I'd like to see kind of bat through, but I want to see Kusal Mendis striking at 150 plus. And then if Kamindu comes in the power play, I want to see him continue what we saw during his T20 appearances against Bangladesh, and I can't remember who we played before that.
South Africa.
Yeah, coming in and really acting as that kind of power play enforcer. I was just going through potential teams against South Africa, and I mean, I could kind of make a case for any one of these 15 guys being in that first team sheet, because I think that potentially either Dunith or DDS might come in as a kind of matchup bowler if it's a slow and low track. But I think the top 6 is pretty set. Sadira's the one who I'm not sure whether he'll be there, but I'm fairly confident that we'll see a Pathum Kuso Kamindu top 3, and then Charith either batting 4 or 5, Hasaranga coming in as a floater around the 6th over, and then against South Africa anyway, I think we're pretty likely to see both Angelo and Dasun being tasked with kind of doing damage at the back end, which I think is another really important area for Sri Lanka's batting, and potentially the biggest kind of chink in this team's armour is how heavily can they score in the last 5 overs? Can they regularly score 50 plus and take it even a step further and have those back ends where between 15 and 20 they go really hard and add 70 or 80? If they can do that consistently, I think they're really well placed to do well in this tournament.
Yeah. Coming to Adil, so we talk about the all-rounders. I think Sri Lanka have 5 all-rounders to choose from. There Dhananjay De Silva, Kamindu Mendis, Angelo, Dasun Shanaka, and obviously the captain Vanidhu Hasaranga. Coming to you, Adil, what can we expect from the captain Vanidhu Hasaranga? You know, we saw him scoring 30 of a part-time spinner just 2 days ago. You know, we want that batting element also from Hasaranga, but we also know that Vanidhu Hasaranga was the highest wicket taker in the 2020 World Cup editions for the past 2 seasons as well. And this time it's in USA and West Indies pitches, as we know. So I'm not sure whether it will assist much to the spinners. We don't know much on the USA West Indies because they rarely play cricket, you know, in those countries, unless it's India versus West Indies or whatever back then. But Adil, your thoughts, especially on Hasaranga's role in this playing 11 this time around?
Yeah, so you started with all-rounders. I think you missed out Dunith Wellalage, so you have to make it 6 all-rounders.
I actually added him to the spin bowlers because I'm not sure whether he can.
That's what. Yeah, so in most of the analysis I see, like they most of them categorize Dunith Wellalage as a spin, just a pure bowler. I mean, it's so sad to see his batting going unnoticed. He is a great batsman. I mean, I love seeing him bat and the fighter. Just on Dunith Wellalage. And as Nick said, I think he'll come into the 11 only if we need this extra spin option. And when he comes, he also brings the added advantage of, you know, his batting. But he's still a long way from, you know, proper T20 top order hard hitting batting. But definitely an advantage. Vanidhu Hasaranga, I think this is the first World Cup where he'll shoulder more responsibilities as a batter. We have seen him in 2021, highest wicket taker of the tournament. 2022, highest wicket taker of the tournament. So 2 different conditions. UAE, there were some grounds which assisted him. Australia, you know the wickets in Australia, but he still ended up as the highest wicket taker. I mean, irrespective of the conditions, we'll rely heavily on him. This time, more so than ever, because he's captain and he'll also play the designated floaters role. We've seen him playing in that role in one game, I think, against Ireland before he took up the leadership. But apart from that, we've never seen him batting up the order in any game for Sri Lanka. But he started as a number 3 or 4 batsman for Sri Lanka under 19. That's his batting pedigree. So he comes with a very, you know, good batting pedigree. And this time, as you said, we'll be relying heavily on him, captain, and I think he's a I think I would not be wrong if I say he's our best power hitter at the moment, looking at form. Dasun Shanaka, yes, he's the most powerful, but looking at his most recent returns, he has not been very consistent. Vanidhu Hasaranga has produced those, you know, momentum changing knocks for us in the recent games. So I personally think Vanidhu will enjoy this responsibility. Having watched his games, whenever he is not performing or whenever things doesn't go well for him, he has looked really, you know, disappointed, frustrated, and his body language shows his how he feels. Right? He's a very much out show. I mean, he presents animated, exactly animated, and whatever he feels is clearly visible. So he'll enjoy this added responsibility, and I think he, more than any captain that we have had in the recent times, even more than Kusal Mendis and Dhananjay De Silva, who are the ODI and Test captains at the moment, I think Vanidhu has a bigger say in terms of team selection, combinations, strategies. So he is that boss guy, and he loves this. I don't think it's a pressure for him. That's his territory. He wants this authority to call the shots. So I am expecting a lot from him, and Sri Lanka is heavily reliant on him. That could be a disadvantage as well, because if Wanindu has a bad tournament, that could be curtains for us. So that's good and bad as well, because on his day he can win a game for you single-handedly with both bat and ball, and if he has a bad day, the others will have to step up. But since you specifically asked about Wanindu Hasaranga, I'll just sum up saying, his performance will define Sri Lanka's fate in this World Cup.
Yeah. All right, let's go with the fast bowlers and let's get Viren to touch on it. So I think the fast bowling lineup looks stacked. Yuswanta Chamira, Dilshan Madhushanka, Matheesha Pathirana, and Nuwan Tushara. Viren, which of the 2 or 3 fast bowlers will you go in the playing 11 for Sri Lanka? And also, how do you see this bowling attack gonna stack up? We'll focus on the fast bowling first and go to the spin bowling. But first of all, your thoughts on the fast bowlers that have been picked. Asita Fernando in the reserves. Do you think, first of all, Asita Fernando deserves to be in this squad, first of all, or are you satisfied with these 4 fast bowlers that are in the squad?
Firstly, Pawan, I think this is something that's refreshing about Sri Lanka cricket. It's brilliant to see 5 genuine quicks going in for a World Cup squad. Like, I don't think our fast bowling resources have been this well spread out in the recent past. Yes, we've had Chaminda Vas, Nuwan Kulasekar, Lasith Malinga, but 5 genuine quicks in the same era, in the same side, is something for us to be proud of. If you're asking me to shortlist 2, I think Dushmantha Chamira, if he's fit, has to feature. The most experienced campaigner, the leader of the pack, and been very, very unfortunate with World Cups in the past due to his injury concerns. So I'd like to see him fit throughout this campaign. And then it depends on conditions, right? And it depends on matchups and the opposition. If you want a left-arm seamer, we have no other option but Dilshan Madhushanka in the side. We know he has a good track record against the likes of Virat Kohli, etc., but we won't get to that until the Super 8s. But Matheesha Pathirana, based on his form, has to feature. And I think Pathirana, for me, with the running he's had from the IPL, and this is the format in which he thrives, right? We've seen so many local pundits scrutinize him for his extras, but they don't realize that he's been overused potentially in a wrong format. This is the format in which he thrives when he has those short bursts early on. If you're asking me about the spin bowling department, this is where I have genuine concerns about the combination we will take with us in our playing 11. Adil and I spoke about this last week. I would like to see us extend our batting lineup a tad. I'm a tad concerned if Mahesh Deekshana is our number 8 because of how erratic Hasaranga is with the bat, the lack of form that Dasun Shanaka is in, the rut he's in right now with the bat. I wouldn't trust Mahesh Deekshana coming in at number 8, which is why, because of a lack of options, you'd have to go with both Angelo Mathews and Dasun Shanaka in your playing 11. Yep. And this is why I would have made one change in my 15. Yes, it's nice to have Beruwalage in the mix, but I doubt you'll have too many games, especially when you have the likes of DDS or Kamindu Mendis, who you can rely on as your third spinner. I don't see many games in which Dunith Beruwalage fits in as a third spinner. And I would have taken Bhanuka Rajapaksa in our squad. Absolutely. Purely based on his power hitting credentials, purely based on the fact that we need someone to potentially even come in early on in the power play and just clear the inner ring. We saw him do that to good effect for Punjab as well in the IPL. So it would be nice to see him in the mix. But given the options we have, it has to be Deekshana and Hasaranga. But as Nick said earlier on, it will be a toss-up between DDS and Beruwalage for that third spinning option.
Third spinning. So, Viren, will you go with 2 seamers or 3 seamers, like based on like US pitches? Like it depends on the conditions on that day, the pitch and all. But where do we see?
I mean, if you're following my template of Deekshana batting at number 9, you have to play 2 seamers. It has to be Chamira and Pathirana in my books early on. And then if you need to rely on a third seamer, you have Dasun and Angelo who can chip in if required.
Coming to Nick, how crucial this is going to be for Angelo Mathews? We know he's been such a great servant for Sri Lanka cricket, but this could possibly be his final swan song for Sri Lanka cricket. You know, he's been serving Sri Lanka for the past 13 to 14 years, you know, and hasn't been utilized also by Sri Lanka Cricket for the past 3 years until like 2022, until the new selectors came in of Upul Taranga and all that. And that's where Angelo Mathews got the chance to come back to the playing 11. So how do you see Angelo Mathews' experience going to count Sri Lanka Cricket, because he's a former captain also, and he's been performing with both bat and ball for the past 13 to 14 years, but this could possibly be his final ICC tournament this time around.
Yeah, I think the likelihood is that this will be his last ICC tournament. I think he's got a really important role to play in terms of leadership, both as a kind of arm around the shoulder to Hasaranga and also as a kind of conduit between the team and the media. I think he's probably someone who'll be tasked with doing quite a lot of the media duties. And so he sets the messaging, right? So that's really important. But I think he's got a massive role to play with the bat. Whether he comes in, I mean, the likelihood is that he'll come in at probably 6 or 7 and will be tasked with scoring, I think, playing some quite crucial knocks in the back second half of the innings. Viren touched on the fact that there's a little bit of kind of instability in Sri Lanka's top order. There could be some situations where Angelo finds himself in earlier than we might expect. And so I think he's going to have a big role to play with the bat. I said 3 or 4 months ago that you can't predict anything with Sri Lankan cricket, but the one thing that I would bet my house on is that Angelo will bowl the first over of Sri Lanka's tournament. And I've thought that would be the case right up until now. And then I've just sort of had this niggling thought in the back of my head that they could open with de Kock and Rickleton, 2 left-handers. So whether we might see Theeks take the new ball is I don't know. But something that I'm really interested in is I just saw Matt Roller did a piece for ESPN Cricinfo, which had a surprising stat. I think it was that 16 of the last 18 franchise tournaments have been won by the team with the best bowling strike rate. And that got me thinking as to whether there is a way that we can fit 3 frontline seamers in, and you can have either Tushara or Madhushanka bowling serious overs in the power play, Chamira as your kind of all-face bowler, and Pathirana as the guy who can come on and bowl for either in 2 banks or straight out at the back end. And I think that if there's a way that Sri Lanka can make that work, they become a really daunting prospect, right? Because you know that Hasaranga is going to take wickets through the middle over. You know that Pathirana is a guy who's going to be hard to score off and is going to pick up wickets at the back end. And so then if you've got a guy like Tushara or Madhushanka swinging the ball up front, potentially picking up 1 or 2 in the power play, it becomes really difficult for batting sides facing Sri Lanka to build momentum. And then you've got Beeks thrown into the mix, a guy who, you know, very rarely goes at 10s. So I really like the way that this bowling unit shapes up. I still have no idea how the team is exactly going to look. But yeah, I think there's a definite cause for optimism, specifically around the kind of bowling matchups that Sri Lanka can create.
Yeah, definitely. So let's come back to Adil and, the fixtures for Sri Lanka, by the way. So they will face South Africa in New York, first of all. So let's discuss about that match, first of all. Adil, so your thoughts, especially with South Africa. This is going to be our toughest match, I think, in the group, possibly because we know South Africa, captained by Hayden Markram. They have the likes of, David Miller in that playing 11. They have Quinton de Kock at the top of the order. When it comes to bowling, it's pretty much good, with Rabada, Noikia and Kotsi. And then the spinners, they have Maharaj and I think they might play Fortuin. I'm not sure. But your thoughts on playing South Africa? We are getting the toughest match in the first match itself in New York, with the capacity of 30,000, So how do you see that game going in 2 to 3 days? Because, South Africa also looking like one of the best. In compare with squads, I think they look one of the best looking squads, but we don't know how they will perform, obviously. But, it's looking like one of the best already. They have Ryan Rickleton, who could be a surprise package, I feel, because he did really well in the SA20, but we never know how he'll do for South Africa in this 2020 World Cup. So your thoughts and analysis on this match coming up?
Yeah, so as you said, it will be the most crucial game for both teams because even for South Africa in this group, Sri Lanka will be the toughest opponent. But on paper, definitely South Africa looks, they are the favorites for this game on paper. But going by form, looking at the results, looking at how South Africa fared against West Indies in the recent T20 series, they didn't win a single game, right? I think they were whitewashed in that series.
Whitewashed 3-0.
Yeah. But most of the players from that playing 11 are not part of the T20 World Cup. Quinton de Kock didn't play. Skip the captain
Hayden
didn't
Mark.
play.
Even
Yeah, the
Klaasen
captain
didn't play.
didn't play.
Henrik
Klaasen
Klaasen
didn't
played.
play.
Yeah.
Did Rabada play? I think that Rabada didn't play as well, right?
I think he was rested, right? I'm not
Rested,
really
yeah.
sure on that.
So
Probably,
most
yeah.
of their key players in their World Cup from their World Cup squad didn't play. So don't think that's like a proper indication of their current form. But if you look at the IPL form, even Henrik Klaasen towards the end, he couldn't he couldn't score as swiftly as he scored in the initial stages of the IPL. Quinton de Kock had a very poor IPL throughout the season. Aiden Markram, I don't think he scored at least one half century. Rabada was good with the new ball, but I mean the IPL wasn't good for any bowler apart from the genius of Jasprit Bumrah and Sunil Narayan. But Rabada, he had some good spells with the new ball. Nokia, he had a disastrous IPL. He's definitely out of form, and he's someone South Africa will think twice before featuring in that playing 11, because they have some good options in the bench as well. I haven't seen much of the uncapped Bartman, but he boasts a lot of like promise, and he seems like a good fast bowler for South Africa. So
even Coetzee is a good option. Even Coetzee is
exactly.
a very good option. Yeah.
Gerald Coetzee. So we might see them, benching Nokia and playing one of these two. They have Janssen as well. So if Bartman plays, that will be a surprise element for Sri Lanka, because I don't think they have faced him before. So that's where our backroom staff will have to come and do the proper analysis and give the sufficient data to the batters, to our players. So South Africa. I mean, even though most of their key players have not been in their best forms in the past few games, they'll come fresh. I mean, they'll come with some good memories of the hammering they gave us in Delhi in October 2023, and that was like a hammering for the ages, right? First game of the World Cup, everyone excited, and they scored the highest total of the history of World Cup before it was the record was broken after a few games. But anyway, so they'll be in a better space than Sri Lanka, I would say. Even though we have Chamira back, we have Wanindu Hasaranga back in our bowling attack. Even though we have a like much.
I think even Theekshana didn't play. Even Theekshana didn't play that first ODI match. He was injured.
Didn't he play? He played, right?
He played after, I think, the South Africa match, right? If I'm mistaken.
But anyway, so it's a much improved bowling attack from Sri Lanka, and form-wise, a bit of a dip from South Africa. So I think that levels the two teams in terms of South Africa batting, and Sri Lanka's batting, I think, is still yet to click. We can't say they might click, they might not click. And South Africa bowling also is not the greatest of the tournament. So I honestly expect a bit of being too optimistic as well. I honestly expect a close game, because given the unknowns of the game, because it's a new stadium, new wicket, first game of the tournament. We don't know Sri Lanka's form, we don't know South Africa's form. So a lot of unknowns. So I would say both teams start equally, and we should be able to see a close game. But on paper, South Africa are the favorites, and let's see.
Viren, coming to you, how can we stop Henrik Klaasen? Because I feel like he is the danger batter in this South African playing 11 right now, and he's although he dipped a bit towards the end of IPL, I feel like he's the danger man for South Africa right now. So we do have the pace attack as well. So how do you see Viren this? What are the plans? Probably to start. To stop Henrik Klaasen.
If Harshit Rana can do it, Matheesha Pathirana can do it. And I think that's the groove I go with. And South Africa has been our bogey team at World Cups in the recent past. Even in 2012, that was the only game we lost in the run into the final against the West Indies. But in 2014, we opened our campaign against South Africa in Bangladesh. We beat them, and we know what the script had in store for us. So there is something about facing South Africa in an opening fixture that could go well for Sri Lanka. But I want to agree with something that Adil said, and I think he was spot on when he said it might be a blessing in disguise that Sunrisers Hyderabad had Markram Janssen, Klaasen, and the other plethora of overseas players that they had. Because Janssen hasn't had much match practice recently. Markram was on the bench for most of the campaign. So there are certain loopholes that Sri Lanka can target in that 11. But there is an unsung hero in the South African batting lineup who is in basically the form of his life, Reza Hendricks. If Reza Hendricks opens the batting with Quinton de Kock, I know there's a claim for Rickelton to open the batting alongside him, but if Reza Hendricks, purely based on form, finds himself in the 11, he's someone that Sri Lanka should potentially target. Has a weakness against spin, especially with one Indu coming in. I think there are certain weaknesses that we can exploit. Another name that we've not mentioned yet, David Miller, had a very, very quiet IPL. But we know Miller is a big match player, so we'll see if he delivers on the third. But as Adil said, and this has been the trend for us Sri Lankan fans, right? We are always quietly optimistic going into a World Cup. I was quietly optimistic going into the 2019 World Cup in the UK with the squad we had. So if that was my benchmark, you know where I stand now.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you see Sri Lanka beating South Africa by any chance?
I mean, you can never write us off. Write us off at your peril is what I'll tell all the pundits around the world. We tend to deliver, and I think I'm expecting a close game as well. But this is something that we need to understand. The first game of that 2023 World Cup, it was a long tournament, so there was a lot on the line in that first game. But we can almost treat the result of this game as a dead rubber of sorts, because our tournament actually starts against Bangladesh if you take the pre-assigned seedings into effect, right? Because if South Africa qualify, they qualify as the first in our group, regardless of what happens against us. So then that game against Bangladesh, the game against Netherlands becomes important. So all I want is for us to not ride the wave of confidence or the lack of confidence based on the result in this first game. We need to just sustain an even momentum of sorts throughout the group stage, and I think we should be fine.
Absolutely. And touching on the Bangladesh game, Nick, we have to discuss about this match because it's a rivalry match called by the fans. I'm not really sure by stats whether it can be called as a rivalry because, Sri Lanka probably has dominated Bangladesh in all three formats, but, as the fans call it, it's a rivalry. So can't help it. The social media all going crazy over Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. But your thoughts, because this match is the match that defines whether Sri Lanka is going to the Super 8 or not going to the Super 8. So your thoughts, because Bangladesh, Shakib, I possibly think Shakib might play the Champions Trophy coming up. That could be his last tournament. This is probably could be his last 2020 World Cup. But you have Shakib, you have probably Mustafizur Rahman, who's gonna, who's not been doing well in the lead up to the 2020 World Cup. I mean, he did well in the IPL, but he didn't do well when he was given a chance for USA. And obviously, Bangladesh are going to remember they lost 2-1 now in that series against USA. They're not coming with that much confidence. So how do you see it going, Nick? Because this is the match that could define whether we go to the Super 8 or not. And Bangladesh are not coming with confidence since they lost 2-1 against USA as well. And, players are not looking that great. The chemistry of the team is not looking that great. So how do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a game that we've all kind of circled in our diary, right? And given everything that's gone on in the past few years, I think it can be classed as a rivalry, and this will have a bit of spice about it from both sets of players. And I'm sure that our old pal Hatu is going to throw a few comments into the mix as well to add a little bit of spice to the pot. I think it's a game that Sri Lanka should expect to win. I think seam bowling is probably their strength, Bangladesh, but I think that our seamers are better. I think our batting is better. They've struggled to find guys who can really strike the ball, who can hit sixes. And so I think it's a game that Sri Lanka should expect to win. But what I would say is that I actually think that this group is really kind of competitive across the board. And I expect there to be one major upset during the course of this group. I mean, we saw South Africa lose to the Netherlands at the 50-over World Cup. I think Nepal are capable of springing a surprise. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a situation of, Netherlands beating Bangladesh or Nepal taking a game off someone or something happening that we haven't scripted. And I think that the really important thing is that Sri Lanka make sure that upset doesn't happen to them. As Viren said, the South Africa game is kind of a free hit because I think Sri Lanka aren't expected to win it. They can still qualify from the group. But if they do win that game against South Africa, it's just a massive start to the tournament. It gives them a bit of breathing room, and it gives them some momentum and real confidence going into those other games. Because, I mean, I think we've talked about it. South Africa's top six, De Kock, Rickleton or Hendricks, Markram, Klaassen, Stubbs and Miller. That's like as close to a big IPL top order as you can get, right? And so if Sri Lanka can tame those guys, I think they've got to have wind flowing through their sails and think that they can really go on and take on anyone.
Yeah. Also, coming to you, Adil, Bangladesh, they're coming with a series loss. Also, they have players not really performing that well in 2020. I suppose like Bangladesh's weakest format is 2020 because they usually perform well in ODIs and tests. Also, they're not really up to the mark. But I feel like 2020 cricket is their weakest. But you have Litton Das, who's also not in form. You have some uncapped players who are interesting as well. Rishad Hussain did well. I think the recent Bangladesh versus Sri Lanka series also would be quite interesting. Sri Lanka did manage to beat Bangladesh at their own den 2-1. But your thoughts towards this match, because anything can happen. On that, it depends on the day itself, like how Sri Lanka performs. Because Bangladesh is a team who can beat Sri Lanka, but it's on the day that anything can happen. So your thoughts, Adil? Yeah, Adil, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So hope I am audible because there was a bit of a lag for me.
All right. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, all good.
Perfect. So talking about Bangladesh, I see Bangladesh as a team who most of the time rely on some of their star players. So if you take a look at the most recent series in USA against USA, which they lost 2-1.
Yeah.
The moment Mustafizur Rahman turned up, they just thrashed USA in the third T20. So they want their star players to turn up. So if you can keep their star players quiet, if you can not give wickets to Mustafiz, score some runs off him, get Shanto quick soon, get Shakib soon, I think we should be able to. I mean, on paper, we look as the favorites to beat Bangladesh. We even beat them recently in Bangladesh. But if you let their star players to turn up, I mean, that could be then I mean, that would be really hard for us to contain them. Even if you look at the recent ODI World Cup game which we lost. Yes, it was kind of a game where we underperformed more than Bangladesh outperforming us. But in T20s, as you said, they are not a great T20 side historically. But whenever a star player turns up, they just tend to be like a real, a tough team to beat. So I would say, I mean, in my opinion, as long as we can keep their star players quiet, I think that should be enough. But you never know. Someone like Rishad Hussain can turn up and just smack the bowlers around and turn the game for you. I mean, cricket is always.
Even Mahmudullah also. You never know about Mahmudullah's experience.
Mahmudullah, so Mahmudullah is a star player. I mean, if he, he's another player who we should try and keep quiet. So that's something, because I don't think Bangladesh they've given enough confidence for their young players. They've given enough of a long run for them to say, see, I mean, look, it doesn't matter if you fail, you'll still be in the team. We back you. They don't seem to be a management who back players. Very rarely we've seen them, backing players, unless they come out and do something special.
But I think they're backed like Tawhid Hidroy. I think even now Jeka Ali recently, I think, performed for Bangladesh. So they have kind of Mahidi Hassan as well. Sort of,
and even Litton Das has been back for so long, but he's another story of Kusal Mendis. I mean, he's the Bangladeshi Kusal Mendis. But that's my take on Bangladesh. But we just can't underestimate them. We'll have to not do mistakes and just play a game. And it should be. I mean, still will be a close game, but I would rate Sri Lanka to win that game.
All right. So let's
sorry,
go to
Pawan. I hope I'm not. I hope I'm not timed out for this for this interjection here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, continue.
Speaking of the Bangladesh game, Nick earlier highlighted the role for Angelo Mathews in this World Cup to be like the mediator for the team between himself and the press, between himself and between the team and the outside world. We saw our guys get slightly rattled by the timed out incident in that first innings of the World Cup, which hindered our ability to restrict Bangladesh in their run chase, which inevitably cost us a spot in the Champions Trophy.
Yeah.
Bangladesh have a way of getting under our skin, be it with Hatru Singha's team talks prior to games, be it with Shakib's antics on the field. It's important for, and I spoke about this earlier, it's important for our players to retain their composure, retain that same kind of groove throughout the group stage, and I think we should be fine. But if we allow the Bangladeshis to get under our skin with all their antics, both on and off the field prior to that game, and if there's too much hype linked to the timed out incident, I'm quite sure that your star sports pundits are going to go up to Angelo Mathews and speak about the timed out incident on the eve of the game.
Yeah.
Those are factors, those external factors could come into play against Bangladesh, and it's important for us to control it.
And, I think seeing the dressing rooms also, we've seen, Hatru Singha striking out Sri Lanka really badly, with the way that he went with Sri Lanka Cricket as a head coach. He really will eye on this match, and also on the incidents of the Nidahas Trophy also that happened like 5 or 6 years ago. I think still Bangladesh players are haunting over that, all those incidents that happened back then. And, that's why this has gone into a media frenzy rivalry. On that. But coming to Viren once again, Netherlands, we have Netherlands and Nepal as well. We cannot underestimate Netherlands also with what happened now in the warm-up matches, and Netherlands look quite a balanced team as well, although, Hasaranga, Theekshana and Pathirana didn't bowl in that match, but still I feel we cannot, count out to Netherlands because, Netherlands versus South Africa, as, Adil also mentioned, also back then, they've beaten South Africa in the 2022-2020 World Cup. They beat them in the ODI World Cup last year. So how do you see this Netherlands? Now we faced them once in the warm-up match as well. So both teams know, how to analyze it. And that's why I think the Sri Lankan, Hasaranga didn't bowl himself and Theekshana as well. So your thoughts towards this match also?
Netherlands has been a side that has caused us a few headaches in the recent past. The 2022 World Cup first round game where Max O'Dowd nearly got Netherlands over the line in that run chase. The 2023 World Cup qualifiers final, where Aryan Dutt caused havoc for our batting lineup. And we saw him thrive again against our batters. There's something about mystery spinners that seems to get to us, which is strange because we thrive on producing mystery spinners, but we can't seem to face them, be it Aryan Dutt or even Karthik Mayappan from the UAE. We've had issues against spinners, but there's something about the Netherlands that I want to mention here. They're going to miss certain players who are contracted to English counties and are thus unavailable for this World Cup. But this was the same thing that happened to them during the 2023 World Cup as well. And they're a very experienced side. Players like Bas de Leader are very, very exciting prospects. And these are genuine all-rounders, players who can win you games on all three fronts, in all three departments. And those are the kinds of players that Netherlands tend to produce. They have a history of producing such players, from the likes of Ryan ten Descartes down to Bas de Leader. And you have a good leadership group in the Netherlands think tank. And I think that's something that Netherlands will thrive off. I'm actually predicting the Sri Lanka versus Netherlands game to be the big one for us. I have a potential upset in store. I think Netherlands have a very good chance of toppling Bangladesh in the group stage. That's a prediction that I made earlier on. And I think Netherlands is the game that we need to watch out for. It could be one of two things. We could either rattle them out for the mid-30s or mid-40s like we did a couple of editions ago, or it will be a very close game with the likes of Max O'Dowd, etc. coming through. But yes, I'm expecting a good game. And Nepal, they'll miss Lamichhane. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of why he's been excluded. But they miss out on a potential match winner there. So yes, with no disrespect to Nepal, if they can get a solitary win in this group, that will be a very good campaign for them and a memorable campaign for Nepal.
Yep, absolutely. So coming to Nick, who are the key players that we have to watch out for? I mean, for Sri Lanka, who do you think will be those key players that we can see performing? Because, we discussed already about Hasaranga, but talking about the squad in general, who do you think are the key players that have to, live up to the expectations and perform in this 2024-2020 World Cup so that we can progress to the Super 8 or even further than the Super 8 as well?
I think it starts at the top really with Kusal and Pathum, especially Kusal Mendes. I think if he can have the kind of tournament, I mean, the way that we saw him start in the 50 over World Cup, the way that he played against Bangladesh in that last T20 series, if he can carry over some of that form, hit sixes, striker, 150, 160 and even higher, then that sets a really good foundation for Sri Lanka. I think it's an important tournament for Charith Asalanka, who was very good at the T20 World Cup before last and then had a slightly quieter one last time. And I mean, we've talked about Hasaranga, who's obviously going to be crucial with the ball, but with the bat, as Adil touched on, if he playing that sort of that self-designated floater role, coming in probably just after the power play and disrupting plans, scoring in awkward areas, forcing teams to bowl their quicks maybe when they don't want to. If he can add, regularly add those punchy kind of 30 or 15s, that's huge for Sri Lanka. And then Pathirana for me is kind of the real X factor. And if he can carry over the kind of form that we saw in the IPL, then I think that's a huge, huge building block for Sri Lanka, because it just keeps teams from getting away from them at the back end. He's a guy who can take wickets on any kind of pitch, take the pitch out of the equation, as pundits love to say. Even on a pancake flat pitch, you bring him on in the 8th over when nothing's happening and he can make something happen just like that. So those would be my really crucial guys. And then I think also, we have touched on before, it's a big tournament for Angelo and Dasan, whether they can do what they're supposed to do and provide that punch at the back end of innings, whether they can chip in with crucial overs as well. I mean, they're probably going to be bowling one each, two max, but I think it's interesting to see how dogmatic Sri Lanka are with playing both of them, whether if someone gets after Angelo in the first over, whether that leads to a drastic change of plans. And I mean, I think that for them to remain in the team throughout the whole tournament, they both have to be contributing with the bat, because the way T20 cricket is nowadays, you just can't carry passengers in your team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So let's go into the final stages of this video. So how do you see Sri Lanka performing in this 2020 World Cup? Like predictions wise, so I see like Sri Lanka going to Super 8s. I'm not sure afterwards where they'll end up. Like for me, I think Super 8s is all where we can go. So coming to Adil, where do you see Sri Lanka ending up in this tournament?
I mean, if I'm to speak as a fan, I see them winning, but to speak realistically, Super 8s is the most realistic or the most realistic expectation to have, given the recent form, the team that we have, and looking at the oppositions. Super 8, and if we can at least win 2 games in the Super 8 stage, that would be great. And if we can make it to the semi-final, that would be like awesome. But make it to the Super 8, win 1 or 2 games, that would be, I'll call that a successful World Cup campaign for them.
I mean, if Sri Lanka do qualify to the Super 8s, they will definitely face Australia, India, and New Zealand, regardless whether they finish first or second because of the ICC rankings. So, Viren, I just saw like a stat that India has never beaten Sri Lanka in a 2020 World Cup. So, that could come into effect possibly. I'm not really sure, but we do have a really tough Super 8 stage if we go to the Super 8. So, your thoughts if you're going to face Australia, India, New Zealand?
I don't want to start mind games against Indian fans, given our track record against India recently. Pawan will get all the support we can get. But my expectation is to take it a round at a time. We get through the group stage, and if we then do what Adil said and win 2 games, we are through to the semi-finals. And that's then just 2 games away from us going through, because you only play 3 games in the Super 8. And I'm going to change something here. In my predictions, I have Afghanistan toppling New Zealand in that group of death. I have Afghanistan and West Indies going through. So if Afghanistan, India, Australia come through, we saw what happened in the Asia Cup in 2022. We were thrashed by Afghanistan in the first game, went through to the Super 4s. No one gave us a chance of making the finals. And we then beat India, we beat Pakistan, and we went through. So anything can happen. But I'm looking forward to seeing us retain all our players throughout the campaign. I don't want to see too many injury replacements. I don't want to see too many niggling factors linked to Angelo Mathews' hamstring. I don't want to see issues linked to Dushmantha Chamira not being able to have a fulfilled campaign, and it's been quite unfortunate. We had him go to Australia in 2022, and I think he hobbled off against the UAE in the qualifying round. So it's important to see him at full throttle. And if we do retain all our players, and if everyone remains match fit, with our bowling attack, Pawan, as Nick and Adil have kind of outlined earlier, this is the most versatile bowling attack in the entire competition.
Absolutely.
We've got so many options to call on. If you want to rest Chamira against Nepal, with no disrespect to Nepal, you can bring in the likes of Nuwan Tushara. You have people to replace your frontline seamers, and this is a luxury that our think tanks haven't had in the past. And I'm going to add one more name here: Aqib Jawad, a World Cup winner with Pakistan in 1992, being our fast bowling coach going into this World Cup. You've got the likes of Chris Silverwood. You have a think tank with Tilina Kandambi, a serial winner as a coach, in there as well. And you've got Sanat Jayasuriya, Upul Taranga in the mix as well. And this is a think tank that will...
I think, if I'm not mistaken, even, sorry to interrupt, like Wasim Akram was mentoring Sri Lanka for a couple of days as well.
I mean, if there's a trophy for the best think tank backroom staff, we'll definitely clinch it with Upul Chandana being our fielding coach as well. I expect us... I'm going to be quite optimistic, and I know this is a left field call, but I see us reaching the semi-finals. Come at me after the World Cup, and I'll be quite glad to.
Yeah, I mean, even Wasim Akram predicted Sri Lanka to go the semi-finals in this 2020 World Cup. So it's possible with the way that Sri Lanka perform. Maybe could happen. But Nick, coming to you, your predictions for this upcoming 2020 World Cup for Sri Lanka?
Yeah. I echo a lot of what Adil and Viren have said. I think that if Sri Lanka don't make it to the Super 8s, it's a massive disappointment. And with a group with this kind of quality, and that should be the minimum expectation. And then I think when it gets down to that group, it's an anything can happen, right? And anything can happen on any given day. I think that if Sri Lanka perform well in the Super 8s, regardless of making it to the semis or not, that's something that we can be happy with and see as a building block, because this is still a young group and they'll come again. But I think that there should be, I don't think we should be afraid of Australia. I mean, you look at that bowling lineup. I know Stark did really well in the IPL final, but he has days where he can go for 50. Hazelwood hasn't played a lot of cricket. Nathan Ellis hasn't played a lot of cricket. I don't think Zampa's played a lot of cricket lately. And then their batting order, it's a lot of guys who can be boom or bust, the likes of Maxwell, Stoinis, Warner. Is he kind of past his prime? Are we going to get one more World Cup from him where he's in vintage form? I think there are questions about them. I think also New Zealand, from a batting perspective, to kind of get that punch, they're relying on young guys who haven't necessarily done it yet, the likes of Rachin Ravindra, Glenn Phillips, Finn Allen. They're relying on those guys to really get that punch. I think we'd be heavy outsiders to beat India in the semi-finals, but I see Australia and New Zealand as games that Sri Lanka can take on any given day. And like Viren, I think if Afghanistan get through to that second group stage, they could be a bit of a banana skin for everyone with their bowling attack. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see Sri Lanka go out in that second round, but I think there's no reason that anyone should think that this group can't make it to a semi-final.
Absolutely, yeah. So to wind it up, the video, what are the top 4 predictions? I won't go and ask who's the winner and all, just trying to be realistic right now. Coming to Adil, who do you think is going to be the top 4, the semi-finalists in this 2020 World Cup? And if you want, you can possibly mention the winner as well, but starting with Adil. Yeah.
So assuming the seeded teams will make it to the Super 8, from our group, I'll pick India. I mean, it's tough to look beyond them. And Australia. From the other group, I'll definitely pick England. They're my second favorite team. And I would like to see West Indies making it to the semi-finals, even though who's the other team? England, Pakistan, West Indies, and
South Africa.
South Africa. Even though I see South Africa on paper as a stronger team, hosts, I would like to see the hosting nation in the semi-finals. So those are my 4 semi-finals: India, Australia, England and West Indies. And
If you can predict the winner, yeah.
I would like to see another England West Indies final. I would like to see England taking revenge for the Carlos Brathwaite moment. And that's the English
very
fan
wise.
speaking in, but yeah, let's see how it goes.
Very wise choice there. Yeah, Viren, what about you? Obviously, top four and probably possibly the winner as well, if possible.
I mean, this is previewing the Sri Lankan squad, so I'll be the Sri Lankan that backs us to go all the way. India, Sri Lanka for me from our group, and West Indies, South Africa in the other group. I see them as the two favorites. They are backing what Arjo said. I think West Indies will have a very good campaign this year. They have Darren Sammy in the ranks as well, and I think he's a proven match winner in T20 cricket.
Yeah.
My ideal final, and I know this is not going to happen, but an India Sri Lanka final will be nice. 10 years on, KKR won the IPL in 2014 and 2024. India beating Sri Lanka in 2014 and 2024, T20 World Cup final would be nice. But if I'm being realistic, I think West Indies could be the eventual champions. Home conditions with a stacked team, a stacked batting lineup. Yeah, West Indies for me.
Nick, what about you?
I think it's a very hard tournament to call. I think that this is the only tournament in recent times where I can remember where the top 7 or 8 feel really close together. I probably echo Adil's thoughts that India and Australia are the likeliest to go through from our side of the draw. I think England's tournament depends heavily on whether Wood and Archer can stay fit. And, that top 6 being all right-handed, whether teams can target them with left-arm spinners or leg spin. But I would probably go for... I'm really torn between England, West Indies and South Africa, that side of the draw. West Indies, I think, have got probably the best power hitting in the tournament, but I'd say there may be a seam bowler short. They seem to have put a lot of eggs in Shamar Joseph's basket. So I'm going to tentatively say England and South Africa from that side of the group. I don't think South Africa by any means a perfect team, but I think that this is possibly the year when they buck their curse and win the whole thing. Having lost the opening game of the tournament, they're going to do what? Is it a France 2012, or I can't remember, but it's a thing, right? Teams who lose their first game often go on to win the tournaments. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
Argentina against Saudi in the recent FIFA
Yeah, exactly. It always happens in the
Even
football
Australia
World Cup.
in the World Cup as well lost the first 2 matches and then went on to win the World Cup.
Even the 2022 Asia Cup, we lost to Afghanistan and then went on to win all games.
It's a thing, right? Lose the first game.
And it's a tradition for India. It's a tradition for India as well. But interesting to see no one picked Pakistan in the semi-finals. So that's interesting to see over there because usually, I mean, team, pundits do pick, but I think Pakistan this time are way off. I would feel in their caliber losing to Ireland also recently. But coming to my picks, I agree. I think,
sorry. I just want to say, they are out of form, but they're still Pakistan. Pakistan can do things.
And they've probably got the best seam of the lot, right?
Yeah, definitely. So in my analysis, I think Group A, I think it's going to be India and Australia going to the semi-finals. And from the other group, I actually see West Indies and South Africa going through. Unfortunately for England, they will miss out for the semi-finals, in my opinion. And I would like to see Australia versus West Indies final, in my opinion, and then Australia winning the 2020 World Cup. But let's see how that goes. But let's call it off. Thank you so much, Adil, Nick and Viren for joining us. It went past 1 hour and 1 hour 20 minutes, but time doesn't doesn't realize when we speak how much hours or minutes go when we analyze on cricket. But I'll do some time stamping so that people can follow the video after this. So but thank you so much, Adil, Nick and Viren, for taking your time and analyzing on the Sri Lankan squad. So it was great, and we discussed about the LPL as well to begin it with, which is why it extended a bit. But thank you so much, guys, for taking your time and effort.
Absolute pleasure, man. It's been great.
All right. All right, guys. So please do subscribe to the Sports Breakdown, like, comment, and share. We will be posting content on the channel, posting obviously YouTube shots, and we'll try to do a few lives as well coming up, like live commentaries of matches. So let's see how that goes towards the latter end. But thank you so much, guys, and let's see in the next video, guys. Thank you so much, and good night wherever you are, or good morning wherever you are. So thank you so much, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye, guys.